Dr. Grant Show. I am so pleased to bring you our next guest. Dr. Aginah Muhammad is a celebrated best-selling book author. I also have a little confession to make. I do know her from going as far back as high school. Maybe even grammar school,
I
7th, 8th grade.
Yeah, junior high.
Yeah, junior high, but I can't say that is the reason why I brought her on the show for everyone to actually meet you. The reason why I brought her on the show is because even as far back as 7th and 8th grade, I have known Dr. Muhammad to be very dedicated, very caring, very open, and her meticulousness, exactness, and open heart is what drew me to her and made me think about her even through all these years before we even cared about Facebook.
Oh, wow.
And
Thank
what brought
you.
us the reason why I wanted to share her story with you guys today is because a lot of the times people are unaware of how their mindsets contribute to their success. And I don't mean success from the perspective of getting to that in cute, pristine goal success. What I mean by success is just having the courage, the strength, and the faith to take one more step. So I'm going to pass you over to Dr. Muhammad and have her share her story. And if you guys can take time out to just take the parts that work for you and pass along the parts to other people that feel like they need some help and encouragement too, then we have done a great job. Take it away, Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grant, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It is certainly an honor. Um, and just thinking back that we go back 30 plus years, I guess we're dating ourselves. We're getting a little older. Um, but, I often hear people say, "Oh my goodness, you have everything all together. You're doing so well." And I try to be as transparent as I possibly can, because it's not easy. And like you said, people see the end result or they see the outside, but they don't understand what it takes for people to get to a certain, place in life. And for me, I think it was the other week I posted something. There was a memory that came up on Facebook with an interview where I was on the set of my father's show. And my dad passed away unexpectedly of a massive heart attack in July 8th, 2019. And I'm sorry, July 9th, 2019. And it was a devastating loss to our family. But over the years and growing up, my father was always pushing, for a certain level of excellence. And I am also the youngest and the only girl. And so, being a daddy's girl, you want to make sure that you make your dad proud. Um, and I'm not going to say that that journey was easy either. But as I think about my drive and my motivation, a lot of what I did growing up and, even into my early adulthood was based upon making my parents proud. And sometimes that can take a toll on a person as well, because you can lose yourself in trying to please other people. And, like you mentioned, we went to high school together, junior high school together. I graduated early because I was in competition with my brother trying to outdo him. So I graduated at 16. And then I wanted to do him up one more time. So I graduated from college in 3.5 years. And it just became this constant workaholic. But even with that, though I had all of the accomplishments and I was achieving these goals, I got to the point where I didn't really realize, well, what does Aginah want? What makes Aginah happy? And I had an aha moment. To be perfectly honest, I was 35 years old. I had been married probably at that point 10 years, I believe. I think I got married at 24. Now I forget because I've been divorced for 7 years. So some things you just, kind of forget about. But I was not happy. There were some things going on in my marriage that just were not to my standard. But I remained in the marriage because I had 3 young children, and also because my parents had been married for well over 35, almost 40 years at that point. My brother had been married for 20 plus years. So I didn't want to be the failure. And I had to really come to terms and come to grips with that. And that was a point in my life where it was probably my third time seeking counseling. And I know in our community in particular, historically, we don't really talk about going to counseling or talk about seeking out counseling. But for me, that was an outlet. And I implore anyone who is um, struggling or who just wants to get a personal sense of well being that counseling is okay. But I elected to go to counseling because I was struggling with trying to make a decision. Do I continue to live this perfect life of being married, having the nice house in the suburbs, and having 3 children, but inside I'm not happy, because I'm not happy with the situation that I'm in. I kind of felt trapped, didn't know what to do because I didn't want to raise my children in a single parent household because that was not what I had for myself. And I went through counseling, I began to journal, and I started to think about, when did Aginah ever do anything that she wanted to do? What are the things that makes Aginah happy, and what does it take for me to be happy? And I realized a couple of things. I realized that happiness, I can't get happiness from another person, that I have to, get it for myself. I have to be happy. I also realized that, you attract like energy, right?
I agree.
So, we can blame other people, but I had to work on myself. And I made a conscious decision at that point that I needed to be free to be myself and be happy. And I was willing to accept whatever those consequences were going to be. And I have to tell you, Dr. Grant, it was the best decision that I ever made because for the first time at 35 years old, so that's almost 8 years ago,
Mhm.
I realized that I needed to be happy for me and I needed to do the things that were going to help me continue to be on this path of just feeling good about myself. Um, and I'm not going to say that that was without struggle because it wasn't, trying to balance and take care of 3 children as the sole, as a primary custodial parent. That's a difficult, thing to do, trying to balance work, a career, and then talk about having a personal life. But again, still what people see is, oh, wow, she's successful. She's working. She's an author. She has a podcast. She's always doing these different things and her kids, are doing well, but it still takes work. Um, and and so I've tried to be very reflective and very intentional as well in terms of the people that I'm around, the type of energy that I give off, and the energy that's around me. I really believe in that.
Yes.
And and I think that that goes hand in hand with the mindset. Like, our thoughts have power, right? And so if you're thinking positive thoughts, that's going to impact the rest of your day. It's going to impact your health as well.
I
So
agree.
we have to be very mindful of how strong the mind is and how much power our thoughts have over us.
I'd like to take a moment
Mhm.
to revisit one thing that I feel will really help anyone that's on the precipice of a major decision,
Mhm.
be it marriage, relationship, anything. But that happiness part that you touched upon, I want to go back, and I feel sometimes that our internal compass, sometimes due to societal conditioning, it's sometimes a wee bit off
Mhm,
or broken. When when you decide to take this journey
mhm.
to look at what made you happy and rediscover that and walk through the preconceived notions of what society, well intentioned loved ones told you should make you happy, what were the first glimmers that you experienced that gave you the feeling and understanding that, this makes me, or this could, if I explored it deeper, makes me happy? Because some people, I feel, and from my experience, they honestly don't know anymore what that looks like. They don't even know that if I'm exposed to X, is this making me happy? What is this feeling? Can
Yeah.
you dive deeper into that?
Yeah, as I reflect back, it didn't it didn't start when I was 35. It probably started for me it actually started long before I got married, but I was afraid.
Mhm.
So that's another piece,
Okay.
in terms of, sometimes the fear that we have and getting in our own way, right? Um, but each time that I was searching or on this journey, of trying to find happiness, it was after I had experienced, a challenging situation in my life. And I'm a firm believer of trying to make sure I don't make the same error again going forward. I like to learn from situations. And I used to struggle with being by myself and just being, right? And when I was faced with a situation in my probably early 20s, something that I did, and it made me absolutely happy. I always wanted to know what it was like to travel by myself
Mm.
because I had never traveled by myself before. I always, traveled with family or friends or what have you. And I was going through a situation and I just decided I was going to take a trip to New York City,
Oh,
of all
okay.
places.
Of
By
all
myself.
places, we,
Right. Of all places, by myself. Now, because I needed to get my feet a little wet and I was still a little afraid or apprehensive because you're thinking about, oh my God, it's a big city, you're by yourself, what's going to happen? I will admit I did fly into Islip, Long Island, and and I stayed in Long Island just because I felt like it might be a little safer. But I rented a car and I drove into New York City, and I don't know who in their right mind drives to New York City with all of the traffic. But for me, it was like so exhilarating because I just felt like I could do this. And it was at that point that I actually realized, because I think I may have been like 21, 22 years old, that
okay.
I can do anything. So I just kind of developed it was just so much fun and free because what I didn't share, I've always felt like because I was doing everything for other people, I didn't feel free. So for me, it was the freedom to be able to make my own decisions that made me happy. But then each time I kind of, because I'm concerned about what society thinks or concerned about what my family thinks, then I would inch back to, you know, walking the fine line, doing what society says is right, doing what I thought, would make me look favorable in other people's eyes. And I'm not doing it, I'm not saying that I want to be free to do just whatever.
Mhm.
Um, that wouldn't be appropriate, but
Right.
just being able to feel comfortable in the decisions that I make,
Yes.
it, made me feel really good. It made me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I could do whatever I choose to. So now I challenge myself. Um, you may have seen sometimes I'll take a road trip with my children and I just get some form of exhilaration just from being able to drive without pulling over or stopping at a hotel to go to sleep, or, getting there in a record amount of time, because I feel like it's me versus me. Um, but those are, as quirky as it may sound, that's what makes me happy, really being able to have the freedom of thought, and the freedom of action.
Now, there's something else that emerged that I would like to call our listeners and viewers to. Now, this is not my scientific term.
Mhm.
I lovingly label this as the slingshot effect, where you take that dive, like in the example that you gave of pursuing that happiness
Mhm.
and booking that trip to go to New York. And then I was waiting for, and I was curious to see if you experienced it. The slingshot effect, for people that want to know my extremely scientific, fancy term here, is you take that leap, you're embarking upon that freedom, but then all of a sudden, after having experienced that and the exhilaration of it, then the pressing waves of guilt, it can manifest in different ways. The pressing waves of guilt, of should I have, remorse, just doubting yourself and that decision. And then that exhilaration, you're slingshotting backwards into, well, do I do this again? Should I continue down this path? But you're slingshotting and pulling and retracting back into yourself after having that exhilarating
Yeah.
experience. I'm sure there's a sexier scientific term for it, but I've labeled it the slingshot effect because that's how sophisticated I am. But did you experience that? And if so, for other women, and since men are telling me they're watching the show too,
Yeah.
if you experienced that, how did you deal with that so that you could take another step to experience the next level of slingshotness?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that I still experience that, experiencing it right now, as a matter of fact. Um, and, you know, I have to really, either I have to talk it out with someone else who kind of like taps me on the shoulder and says, Agina, what are you doing? Like, do stop overthinking it. That's another thing that I often do. So with making decisions and then like feeling the guilt and the remorse, or questioning, should I do that or should I continue? It's that guilt and overthinking situations.
Okay.
And that is actually something, to be completely transparent, that I still deal with. And I think it's because, and we're all wired differently, of course, but I think it's because I feel like I still have such a sense of obligation, that there are certain things that I'm going to really question. Should I have fun with this, or should I really do this, or how will this impact someone else?
Mhm.
So for me, it's never all about me. I always operate from the framework that there are other people involved, particularly because I am a mom of three. So I have to be very conscious of decisions that I make. But I will tell you, Dr. Grant, something as simple as, I'm going away. I'm still going to be in the state of Illinois, but
Mhm.
I was struggling because I'm going to be gone for 5 days because we all need a disconnect. Been with my teenagers for 10 straight months.
Yes.
And I felt bad because I didn't want to leave them with my mom.
Mhm.
And it was actually my 16-year-old daughter. She gives me a permission for a lot of things, it seems like, when I'm overthinking it. But I was saying to her, oh, I can just drive back and come get you guys, on the days that you don't have to work. And then we can make it a weekend together. And she said, Mom, really? You're going to drive back here to come get us? We see you every day. Go. Stay away for 5 days. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that, for some of us, we still need to get that reassurance. So I won't call it permission. I'll call it reassurance that the decision that you're making is okay. And that it's okay for you to make that decision again if it's going to bring you some sense of peace and happiness.
Okay. And I agree with you. I think it depends upon whatever vernacular we are raised in.
Mhm.
I will often refer to it as giving yourself permission.
Yes.
Someone else may refer to it as some level or needing some level of reassurance.
Mhm.
My my interpretation of it ultimately is whatever vernacular allows you to take that first step forward, and however you process it, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel we do need that little bit of reassurance, especially as being a mom. I
Mhm.
think during this time, especially statistically, I'll cite statistics that I don't know what goes on in everyone's household, but
Mhm.
statistically, women usually take the greater share of the domestic portion of work, even in a partnership.
Mhm.
And for single moms, without that domestic partner present, you're taking on 110%
Right. Yes.
of that mental load. And it's not, and I say 110% because some people might say, hey, your math is off. I say 110% because not only are you trying to plan for not only your needs, the household needs, the growing, ever growing, we joked about this earlier,
Mhm.
laundry that seems to multiply and breed without provocation, but you're also taking on the masculine energy of trying to also make sure that as you are the head of your household, that you are providing the proper guidance and covering all facets and representing all aspects, both feminine, masculine energy, the planning aspect, the other planning aspect. And that's why it feels like 110%. It actually is because you're engaging all parts of your brain. There is a scientific term. I forgot the exact terminology, but the definition of it is essentially you're mentally calculating
Mhm.
all the things that need to be done, the doctor's appointments, the did I clean the dish by this, a certain sequence of things have to be done. And when you're a single parent, because I come from a, for all intents and purposes, a single parent household, even though my mother was married 4 times, I still say it was a single parent household
Yeah.
for most of those times. But that mental toll that scientifically stated and proven that women usually take on because our brains are hardwired differently. It's challenging. You know you can do it, but it takes an extra toll, which means that you need to allow yourself
Mhm.
permission to
Yes.
take the break.
Absolutely. You you hit it right on the head. This absolutely, absolutely. And I think we struggle with that mom guilt because, and we don't allow ourselves that grace to take the time to just rejuvenate. If you are, we often see this, like an empty cup can't pour into someone else. So if you're not replenishing yourself and taking care of yourself, you're not going to be any good to your children, if you're a mom, or if you have children, but you can't be any good to anyone else if you are not replenishing yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And, we talk about self-care. Self-care doesn't necessarily have to be going to get your hair or your nails done. I'll tell you, for me, self-care is like not having to think about the next thing that I have to do. And it's funny when you were talking about the mental calculations, people will often say to me, "Oh my God, you're always in deep thought." But I do feel like my mind is always racing, always going, thinking about what's the next thing that I have to do. So self-care often for me is just being still, and for me, that is actually happiness. I've had, we could talk about so much, but I'm trying to date in my 40s. And it's interesting when a man will ask me, well, what do you do for fun? What makes you, what do you enjoy doing? Being able to sit at home in my house with peace and quiet and read a book,
But still, think
just
about
sit
it.
still. So that may come across as boring
Mhm.
to someone, but for me, that is just the best thing ever because I am just able to kind of, you know, release all of the stress that I've experienced and just be. and then prepare and gear myself up, for when it's time to get back moving again. And that's okay for us to do. It's okay for you to take the time that you need, even if it's not doing anything at all.
And I'm a huge fan of learning and identifying what is it you really need. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be what society or the latest magazine article says. It used to be for me, and also accept too, I want to bring this up for anyone that's listening too, except that it may change depending upon the state that you're experiencing for that chapter and point in your life.
Mhm.
A perfect example on my end used to be if I went to the spa and had a massage and just unplugged and disconnected, not just from the internet and the phone, but not having to think about what happens next, not having to have my ears open to the next sound since I have young children and interpreting what that sound means. And is it death to everyone or are they still living for another
Right.
5 minutes? Um, but the spas, as of the time of us talking right now, those options have been removed and
Mhm.
taken off the plate temporarily, not permanently, but temporarily. So, right now, what does that self care look like? And to allocate and carve out that time and doggone it, if you need to, fight for
Yeah.
that time. And now, what my self care has really morphed into has been, like you said, peace and quiet, my husband taking the children, and me, let me say this, giving myself permission to let him take the children.
Yeah.
And if things are not perfectly done the way I normally would do them, that it's okay.
Mhm.
So I am married, but for anyone that is not married, still giving yourself that permission. And when you hand off your children or your pet chihuahua, I have a friend that has
Mhm.
cats,
Okay.
to someone, and then realizing that the way they're doing it, it's still not the way you would do it. And this applies to work too.
Mhm.
It's not the way you would do it, but as long as they're crossing off the most key and crucial points in order to move it forward, and at the end of the day, everyone's still alive, they're breathing, there's no mental harm done, that's okay too. It is merely a simple pocket of time, but you take 10 steps and leaps forward by giving yourself permission to have that self care once you understand, identify what moves you, what works for you for this point, this stage, and this chapter in your life. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that that is that is definitely something that we need to for some of us it takes a bit of practice, to do that. um I will say I've been known as one who likes to be in control. And I also had to get to that stage where I'm like, you know what, I can't tell you how to do things. Sure, I would have made a different decision, but you know as long as I'm getting the time that I need, and for me, as long as my children come back alive or they haven't done anything where they're getting in trouble, I'm okay. But even with that, it takes a certain level of maturity and growth for you to be able to release some things. We cannot be in control of everything. The only individual or the only thing that you can control really are your actions and the way you respond to others.
Mhm.
So I think, it may take that conscious effort for, as parents to kind of think about, okay, this is what I need. I need this time to myself. And I have to trust that the other person who's, in the situation of a single parent who's going to have my children, I have to trust that they're going to make the best decisions and
Mhm.
be okay with that. So a lot of the control issues that as moms as we can have, because I remember, when I was married and my husband at the time would, try and give me an opportunity to take time for myself. I was still trying to dictate what he's doing, where is he going to take the children, what should they eat? Let him parent the way he knows how to parent.
Hmm.
As long as the child is not harmed in any way, don't worry about that. So the control, I think, also comes from having a lack of trust. And so we have to also learn how to not only trust other people, but trust ourselves as well, that that the decisions that we're making are okay. Um, so for those who are listening, find a way to find someone. I know it's difficult, obviously, in the pandemic, especially if you have young children and if you're a single parent, to find whether it's the co-parent or if it's a friend or family member. And I know we want to be kind of cognizant of where we are interacting. But even if you could just talk to your children and say, hey, mommy needs, even if it's 20 minutes at a time, pop on a Netflix or I don't know, Disney Plus, and make sure that they're situated, they have the snacks that they need. And if it means just kind of going into your room, I often use the Calm app and I'll just meditate because for me, my happy place is also the water and a beach. And clearly living in Chicago, that's not happening. So I will do the visual meditation.
Hmm.
All I need is 10 minutes sometimes. So sometimes you just need to take it in spurts as you can until you can get to the point and until we can get out of this pandemic where if you have friends and maybe you can, swap, you help out a friend with her children for a few hours and vice versa. But with that, you have to begin to learn how to trust and relinquish all levels of control so that you can gain better control of yourself and your time and
I
having
agree.
that self-care.
I completely agree. The relinquishing, the once you have, and I'll say this caveat before we wrap up, because I know for moms with kids, relinquishing the trust and the control, easier said than done.
Yeah.
I will say this to take it and find minute steps and just establish in your mind what's the most important thing for you when you return from your 20-minute vacation, mental break and vacation, and also prioritize the end result of how much better you're going to feel. But I think if we just even just start there, and we can always expand it out as time progresses and moves forward, depending upon what's going on in your life. But I will definitely say, as a mother, I trust my husband implicitly, but at the same time, I wanted him to maintain a certain standards that if by the time he came home, for example, yes, the children are cared for and they're clean, but the house has also been clean, the dishes have also been done. But being able to acknowledge where that person's strengths are, because I don't want to say limits because that's not fair
Mm.
in the line of this discussion, but just where that person's strengths are. And if those strengths align with your own, even if there's an overlap, even if it just touches and kisses
Mhm. Mhm.
and everything else is upheld, then you're absolutely off to a rip roaring start. Before we go, I did want to very briefly please tell people more about how you found the strength to write these best-selling books,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people also have a story inside of them that they want to commit, pen to paper,
Mhm.
and they're struggling with that. Can you briefly share with people how to get that started?
Yeah, it was certainly a process. I worked actually in a writing group with other people. And so having that motivation from others and seeing where they were in their process and their journey was very beneficial to me. But also, I had to get this story out because I knew it was a part of my journey to healing as well. but having the motivation and the support of other people. So I would encourage anyone who and because I agree, everyone has a story to tell. So if you can get together with someone else who's also interested or planning on writing a book, having an accountability partner will certainly help you through that process. But it's all mental as well. You know, you've got to be very interested in what you're writing about to have that strength to continue on, because sometimes you can get a little frustrated. But if you've got, you know, an accountability partner, I think that's very key. And then also think about, what are you trying to convey to other people? Why is it important to get your story out? And you'll find that strength from within.
Okay, I love that. Where can people find you and your books?
Oh, great. So I am on social media. My handle is at Dr. Aginah M. That's DRAGINAHM. They can also find me on my website, which is aginahmuhammad.com. And they can find me once a week at Light It Up Podcast. I do host a weekly podcast. So that's on all platforms, wherever, you know, you listen to your favorite podcast. So,
Excellent. So everyone, I rarely make character references often, but I do highly recommend that you participate and learn from Dr. Muhammad, because she's not only distilling great gems and pearls of wisdom, but her as a human being, the vibration that she resonates at, that energy that she carries with her, it's contagious. So if you want to raise your energy and feel empowered and actually accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, and you just need a gentle nudge or a cheerleader, I recommend really that you just gobble up whatever information that she has for you in the form of her books, her podcasts, because you certainly are going to start making great strides in the right direction if you do so. And it's really about your mindset for anything and everything that you want to do. For future episodes and previous episodes of the Dr. Grant Show, I can be found on edibleaddiction.com. The reason why I share this show with people is because I lost my mother to food addiction and obesity. And when everything settled, I began to realize, I have the light bulb moment, that she had researched everything about dieting, everything about calorie counting. She lost the weight, over 20 pounds at one point in time, and she gained it all back after 3 divorces and several job changes. And the light bulb moment came for me, aside from the fact that we could barely find a normal sized casket to bury her in, was, this is not about your willpower. This is about your mindset and having the right tools to reprogram your mind when your back is against the wall, so to speak. And that's why I have our guests here, like Dr. Muhammad, here on the Dr. Grant Show, so that you can see and be exposed to various situations that may have tapped your mindset, and normally you would back down and break the promise to yourself. But I want to show you that it can be done. You can find the strength to last one more day and one more step by taking these tips from our guests. So everyone, thank you so much for watching the Dr. Grant Show. We're on Mondays, Wednesdays, and on the weekends on Saturdays. And once again, go on edibleaddiction.com if you want to see previous episodes as well as future episodes as well. If you want additional help with your situations and your life, you can also look into the Edible Addiction Mentorship Program. All right, everyone, much love to you. We will see you soon. Bye.